300 scammers just made $2.8 billion by kidnapping people and moving them across state lines. The worst part, it was all paid for by the exploitation of the Medicaid system in the USA, in a story being absolutely buried by mainstream media. Let's dive into it. So basically, a bit of context here. In Arizona, they have these sober houses. And the sober houses were designed, I'm pretty sure, in good faith, where they wanted to reduce the amount of people, specifically on the streets and also specifically in the indigenous population, that were addicted to alcohol. As you may know, alcohol is the #1 substance abuse in our society, and it is killing the world. So you got these sober houses whose main mandate is to get people sober on a pathway to recovery. And if it met certain criteria, then you'd have government-funded health programs basically funding the people that stayed there. So effectively, kind of a single-payer, multi-operator type of function where anyone could open, own, and operate these houses, these sober houses, but you'd have the government paying for it as long as you met certain criteria. And if you watch Julian's shorts, you'll obviously think, hey, this kind of sounds like the Cobra effect. And you'd be right. Because wouldn't you know it, there was a group of people, about 300 people, that set up these sober houses, set up these purpose-built dwellings with the guise of helping people, and then basically paid recruiters to go pick up the affected population. They would effectively carry them across state lines, kidnapping them into a different part, and check them off on their list as people they were trying to help. All the while they were doing that, there was absolutely zero path to recovery, zero path to rehab, zero real effort to actually rehabilitate these people. And the people would ultimately, these affected populations would ultimately leave the sober houses in worse shape than when they entered it. So we have this well-intentioned government program, this unnatural force entering into the natural environment of the world. And then you have the evil, the bad piece of society kind of manipulating and trying to take advantage of this program. And then you have the general population or the society ultimately worse off because of it. And so the theme that I want to dive into today is, who's to blame here? Is it the unnatural force, the person that enabled and allowed this to happen? Or is it the people that took advantage? And it starts to sound like the same dilemma that we had almost 500 years ago, which is where the Cobra effect stems from. So in a quick tangent, I want to explain exactly what that meant. Basically, in and around the 1700s, lots of Indian citizens were being eaten by cobras. This is bad. We do not want the citizens of India being eaten by cobras. So the government, trying to help this unnatural force, kind of tampering with this natural environment, put a bounty onto the cobra's head. This is a well-intentioned plan. They said anyone, any citizen, any person that brings in a cobra head, effectively signaling that you've killed a cobra, you've helped fix this problem, we're going to give you money. We're going to pay you to kill cobras and stop the cobra problem. And that was great. And it worked. And the cobra population was declining. However, there was a group of swindlers, a group of scammers, a group of misintended individuals that started breeding cobras. They wanted a quick way to make a quick buck. They wanted the path of least resistance to money. You hear that? We're going to talk about that in the future. And so, with this path of least resistance to money, they decided to breed cobras. Now, as you might expect, the government did not like this. The government didn't like being taken advantage of. They had a well-intentioned plan that they wanted to use, and it was being scammed. It was being taken advantage of. So they cut the program. No more bounties on the cobra head. And what do you think the cobra breeders did? They released all of their cobras, all of these cobras that were being bred to kill, into the wild. So now you had a cobra population of X. You then had the population decreasing a little bit because of the efforts of human beings. And then you had this exponential rise of unfortunate cobra deaths because of all the breeders that released their cobras into the wild. And so again, I ask you, and this relates back to the sober house problem, who was at fault? Was it the government setting up a well-intentioned program incapable of seeing that someone would obviously scam the system? Or is it the scammers? Obviously, the scammers are no good. It begs the question if we do more harm than good by meddling. Because certainly in Arizona, the alcohol-addicted population is getting worse. Certainly in Arizona, these sober houses didn't help.
A target acquired.
They asked us specifically if our friends are natives.
Sometimes recruited by their own blood.
She turns around and tells me, you should go to Phoenix.
She tells you to go?
She told me to go. I told her no. I'm not going.
Christine Barber is an advocate who works with women on the streets of Albuquerque. She says a third of the women she helps are Native Americans, and she's seen vans approach them routinely.
They'll offer motel rooms. They'll offer brand new clothing. They'll offer their own place to live. They'll give them cash. They'll buy them drugs. They'll get them all of these things in a way as a way to get them to go to these rehabs.
Once recruiters for fraudulent sober living homes or group homes convince someone to come to the Phoenix area, the next move is to sign them up for the American Indian Health Program through Access, Arizona's Medicaid agency. The FBI says scammers bill the state for therapy services that are not actually provided.
So I think that we can see here how the government's well-intentioned work and their inability to actually execute on those good intentions are falling down here. Obviously, we have a group of heinous individuals that are taking advantage of a people and of a system. And I'm not giving them any leeway. But the government is clearly not actually keeping tabs on what's going on here. They do not have the capacity to actually ensure efficiency or validity in the programs that they offer. This is why the tax dollars are so high, and yet the efficiency of the tax services are so low. Here in Canada, we pay an exuberant amount of taxes for our healthcare system. And yet our healthcare system is one of the worst ones in the world, with people waiting upwards of 18 months to see specialists for routine procedures that are down in a privately funded healthcare system or in a better run healthcare system. And we had that same effect, but on a smaller but more exploitative way here in Arizona.
I sat down with Ruben Gallego, U.S. Representative for Arizona's 3rd Congressional District. Gallego is well aware of the sober living scheme plaguing the indigenous community. Is the state to be blamed for providing services or paying out funds for services that just aren't being provided?
I think the state is to be blamed for not providing the oversight and regulation. I don't blame them for trying to get these services. These services are very important.
And this is the key point. This is the main thesis. This is what I want you guys to have discussion about in the comment section right now. I think the state is to be blamed for not providing the oversight, but I don't blame them for trying. But the question is, what is the pathway to actually seeing a population that has success in living rather than being dependent on somebody else's efforts? In suggested videos under this one, there's an investor video saying to transfer your Airbnb listing to a sober living home to upkeep profits for your secondary property. Wow, that is insane. So obviously I can't verify this, but this YouTube user is saying that it is more profitable to run a sober living house as part of this scam, or to actually list your house as an Airbnb, doing the work in an Airbnb. What is the answer? How do we get society into a spot where it is not easier to scam, but rather it's easier to work hard and you get paid for that? I worked at a native Amazon residential treatment center, and a client that had been brought there from New Mexico for this. It was a sad and scary story that sounded straight out of a movie. I believed her and did say something, but was hushed and then lost my job. Money-hungry fools. Yeah, and that's what it is. It's the lowest amount of effort for the maximum amount of dollar. And they're money-hungry, scamming fools, taking advantage of a system that your tax dollars put into place, that your elected officials put into place. How do you feel about that? What are we supposed to do as citizens? Obviously, we didn't vote for this program, but we enabled it. We participate in the system that enables this level of scam to happen.
All of a sudden, a few years ago, white vans started prowling around tribal reservations all over the United States, with them picking out anyone who looked homeless or intoxicated and then promising them shelter, food, and a chance to get sober. And once the person got in, these vans carried them dozens or even hundreds of miles away to Phoenix, where a network of sober living homes awaited them. Now, to be fair, some homes did actually make an effort to provide treatment, but
boom, some homes. So you can tell at the beginning, the plan, the program, this idea that a subsidized sober living care was going to work. And it did. There were some honest entrepreneurs that gave a run at it. They wanted to make it happen. They wanted to make a difference. But then they realized that an incompetent government wasn't going to actually be looking into it.
those were few and far between, right? Most people who talked to reporters, they described empty, unmanaged facilities with no furniture, little food, no counseling or enforcement of sobriety, with people routinely drinking, doing drugs, and fighting inside the homes, and some even overdosing and dying right there in their bedroom. In fact, according to NPR, one place locked residents in their room while another gave them a daily allowance, which many just spent on alcohol, with one person saying about the classes they had to to attend, quote, it's the same curriculum over and over again. Most of us just ended up passing out in class. And I mean, even the white vans, they sometimes reportedly stopped at liquor stores on the way to Phoenix to ply people with alcohol. With one Navajo citizen and state senator telling the New York Times, the idea seems like, let's keep them drunk, keep them using. The longer they stay, the more money.
Oh, that hits home. Keep them drunk, keep them using. The longer they stay, the more money. We can kind of see how this is starting to also look like just the entire medical system in America, where we have this single payer, we have this insurance, and as a result, hospitals don't really have to compete for business because the business is guaranteed. On a smaller, less important scale, we have this with car insurance. We have body shops charging double, triple, sometimes quadruple the amount that they would charge to an individual paying cash because the insurance companies just pay for it. And so what happens? Ultimately, we have all of these people paying more for doing less. And that just adds and contributes to the negativity of the world. It just contributes to the deterioration of our money. It contributes to the declining value that society is able to collectively give its citizens.
And while in reality, these were basically glorified crack houses, on paper, they looked like legit treatment centers housing thousands of patients. And thanks to the lax oversight, especially during the pandemic, nobody looked any deeper. So the facility's owners, they turned Arizona's Medicaid program into a giant slush fund, with them billing the state exorbitant amounts for treatment services they didn't actually provide, as well as for patients who had left, gone to jail, or died. And between 2019 and 2022, payouts for outpatient behavioral health claims exploded from $53 million to $668 million, with one woman who's since been arrested raking in $22 million through 2 treatment companies that she owned, with her then reportedly spending that on cars, homes in Las Vegas and Arizona, diamond necklaces, and a showroom's worth of Gucci, Versace, and Louis Vuitton bags. And in May of 2023, Arizona's new governor, Katie Hobbs, revealed the extent of the crisis, with the details really only getting worse and worse since then. Right, reportedly, since 2019, the fake providers have defrauded Arizona as much as $2.5 billion.
The $2.5 billion mistake kept people on the streets, kept them intoxicated, kept them coming back, and ultimately inflated and made everybody's purchasing power a little bit less.
So the state's Medicaid agency suspending reimbursements to 290 providers and capping payouts to everyone under the American Indian Health Program. And with that, you might think, okay, that's it, right? The bad guys go to jail, the victims get the treatment they need, everybody goes home, roll credits, happy ending. But no, as it turns out, a lot of legitimate healthcare providers, they got caught in the crackdown on all these fraudsters. In fact, you have ProPublica reporting that 30 formerly suspended behavioral health providers have been cleared to start getting reimbursed again. But during those suspensions and ensuing legal battles, I mean, they lost a lot of blood, financially speaking. In fact, in a survey of providers this spring, half said they were close to shutting down, and another 20% said they had either already closed or were filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah, there's this outsized risk, this outside problem when you crack down on an industry. You have the do-gooders that arguably get punished worse because their margins are tighter, because they're actually trying to provide value and do good work. There should be no businesses with these outsized, 10,000% margins where you can just, work a little bit and provide and gain a pile of value or a pile of money. The whole world works in this symbiotic way where you give a little bit of value and you get a little bit more value in return, incremental returns. I know at Bitcoin, well, this is how we work. We sell Bitcoin, we charge a 1.2% spread. We make 1.2% of our transaction volume. This is a long-term, high-volume play. And oftentimes we struggle to find customers because these other customers are being promised that they're getting charged less, or even worse, they're being swindled by scammers themselves who are saying they're going to give them all these types of Bernie Madoff returns. So what happens? The government cracks down. The government tries to get rid of those bad guys. And us, as a legitimate Bitcoin company, it gets harder for us to operate. We need to go through more regulatory red tape, spend more money on lawyers, ultimately providing less money to our end user through a form of research and development, making our product better. I ask the question, isn't it better if they just stay out of the way? If the only way to live was to actually provide value to the earth, would the scams disappear? Because arguably, a scam would be short-lived. A scam wouldn't have the longevity that a legitimate business does. And today I'm getting so frustrated because it feels like the opposite. It feels like legitimate businesses do not have longevity, where we see the same old scam roll over and over and over. You look at WTF happened in 1971.com, and you can see when the money detached from reality, we had products, services, and businesses in a constant state of decline. For the 53 years since the money has been detached from gold, we have seen nothing but a decline in value and an increase in price. In other words, a less good world is getting more and more expensive. So what can you do? As with anything, you want to build the world that you want to see. And so I recommend that you find those businesses. Find the legitimate businesses that are trying to make an honest day's wage, that are actually trying to make the world a better place, and support them. Is it going to be cheaper? No. Is it going to be harder? Probably. But I promise you, your grandchildren will have a better life. Your great-great-grandchildren will be the result of a better world thanks to your effort. So what do you want? An easier Tuesday morning? Or do you want your great-great-granddaughter to actually have a shot at living in the world like it was supposed to be? But that's just step one. And obviously, I'm just one man. What can you be doing? What can we be doing in 10 years? What about step 2, 3, and 4? After we lower our time preference, after we start thinking about and acting on a world for the future, then what does that look like? How can you and I, as just simple, common individuals of the world, how can we actually make a difference? Comment down below, and of course, stay sovereign.